All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 21 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Saturday evening. We'd like to welcome into the byproduct of our flagship podcast, the Primetime Rundown. We'd like to welcome the radio voice of the New York Islanders, Chris King, or as otherwise known, and we heard this on Monday night from Dan Rusanowski, Kinger.
Now, was Dan speaking good about me or what?
He was. Yes. When I brought that up that you were going to be our next guest, he had one big smile on his face. So that's some good stuff there. Chris, thank you so much for joining me here this evening, and
Sure.
It's really a pleasure.
Sure, no problem.
All right, it's going to be a ton of fun here tonight. So for those that are tuning in for the first time, as we mentioned in the open, the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series is a byproduct of our flagship podcast, the Primetime Rundown. It happens to air on Mondays and Thursday nights, and we'd like to have a few special guests on. And Chris has been extremely. It's been great to have him, and will be great for the next half hour to have him on our show. So, Chris, let's get to it. And really, for those, again, that do not know, this is a podcast about more than just what you read in the team's media guide. So let's get to know Chris King a little bit more. Chris, so you have been the voice of the New York Islanders for the last 25 plus years. That is something else. For those, again, that do not know, WRHU 88.7 out here on Long Island, 103.9 WRCN Long Island News Radio, and also ESPN Radio 98.7 FM and 1050 AM in the New York area. So to start everything off, Chris, how are you and your family during this quarantine?
Yeah, everybody's doing good, Joey. We're just doing what we're supposed to do, stay in and stay safe right now. It is obviously starting to loosen up a little bit here on Long Island, especially with businesses, most of them returning yesterday. So, slowly but surely, we hope to make our way back to hockey season. But, the health of everyone is paramount right now for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And just, again, to get things started with you, Chris, you made your way into the NHL by a few different places. Originally, you were actually a software engineer. We'll get to that in just a moment. But to start off your college career, you went to State University of New York, SUNY Geneseo. That's a Division III school up north. And you received your bachelor's in communication, 1979 to 83. You were there. I don't mean to outdate you or to date you here, but you were also sorry.
Just means I'm old.
Yeah, it's all good, man. And you were a part of the student radio station WGBC, WGSU, and also you were a part of GSTV, the television station. So talk a little bit about your time there, and was broadcasting always the road that you wanted to go down?
Well, I had two main interests, Joey. When I went to college, it was broadcasting and it was computer science. And obviously we'll get to both, but broadcasting was the big one. I was the classic kid who would go down in the basement and turn the sound down on the television and try to be Marv Albert. Everybody in those days wanted to be Marv Albert. So I played high school hockey for East Islip, and pretty much realized by my senior year, when you're a fourth line center on your high school team, it doesn't bode well for college, and maybe you should try a different avenue. So always had that great interest in broadcasting, and Geneseo was an absolutely great place to get an incredible amount of experience. You talked about, they had two radio stations and a TV station. I got there at the perfect time as a couple of seniors who were broadcasters had just left and jumped right in as a freshman. So I got to do over 100 NCAA games over 4 years. As we did every single game home and away between the two radio stations, got some TV experience as well, and literally, the skills I use today, every single day, whether I'm doing Islanders or I also do Long Island Ducks baseball in the summer, are really those that I learned at Geneseo, somewhat in the classroom, but really more so hands-on at those two radio stations and the TV station. I just got a ton of experience. It was absolutely a great 4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy because when I was doing the research on you and I was looking up to see when you had gone to Binghamton, that was the next place you went to get your master's in computer science, 83 to 85. There was no hockey program down there. Did you decide to go? Obviously you had said that that computer science was almost your second choice, if you will. But towards that time when you went for your master's, Chris, did you say to yourself, okay, so are we going to officially go down this road, or is broadcasting still a possibility?
Yeah, it's a interesting decision, Joey, because I had the two interests. So at Geneseo, even though my bachelor's was in in communications, excuse me, my minor was in computer science at Geneseo. So now I graduate with that bachelor's degree in communications, but realize I can just go 2 more years to Binghamton and get a master's in computer science. So at that point, I still had pretty much equal interest in both areas, actually. So graduating, Binghamton in 1985 with that master's degree in computer science on Long Island at the time, Grumman was a company that, had the most employees on Long Island, over 30,000 at that time. And they were really hiring a ton of people, especially out of college, to fill some of those software engineering spots. And it just, at the time, it was easier to break into one of those two fields, if you would, on the computer science side, because Grumman was such a huge force on Long Island.
Right, absolutely, yeah, and that's actually a perfect segue, because for 9 years you were a software engineer with Grumman, actually out in Calverton, and in our communication between you and I, originally I had thought it was actually at in Bethpage, because that's where Northrop Grumman is now, but as we were discussing earlier, Northrop actually did not purchase them until after you had left. So pretty cool, or significant information there that you actually provided. We learn something new every day. That's pretty good. So your time there, Chris, then you eventually went to Reuters. You were a network engineer from 94 to 98. And then you eventually came to the New York Islanders. So let me ask you this. Now, obviously, during this time, in 2020, or even just a few years back, when broadcasting really became big and everyone wanted to be a part of it, podcasting became big, and the accessibility to these radio stations, student radio stations at university or wherever it may be, in that time, obviously I was just born 95, but in that span, were you thinking, because you sort of left that field for a bit, you obviously were a DJ, we'll get to that in a minute, but in that time span, did you say to yourself, okay, so this is the road I'm going to go down, or is there a road back to broadcasting if you wanted to?
It almost started more, Joey, like, is there a road back? Because getting out in 1985, as you said, I got an incredible job at Grumman out in Calverton on Long Island. I got to live in Hampton Bays, a beautiful town out east.
Ah, yes.
And actually, was really enjoying it. That was 1985, right out of grad school. Was doing that for 4 years, was totally happy with it as my full-time job. Wasn't doing any radio at all, though. And I started to get that itch. I really missed radio because, at Geneseo, it was my life. I lived at those 2 radio stations and the TV station. Then, as you mentioned, at Binghamton, I didn't really do any radio at all, even though they had a station. The focus strictly was on getting that master's degree, which pretty much took up all your time. Right. So I did get to see some hockey in Binghamton, though. At the time, they had the Binghamton Whalers, who played, yes, in the downtown Broome County Arena. So it was nice to still get my hockey fix that way. But after 4 years of doing the software engineering at Grumman, I just had the itch to really get back to radio. I just absolutely missed radio. So now it's 1989, and I got to find a way back in. And living out east and working out east, there was a small radio station, a classic rock station called WRCN that's still there now. It's a different format, and we're actually on that station now, the Islanders are, but then it was a rock station, and it was a station I listened to all the time, and I loved. I'm a big music guy, and I just kind of went to them and said, hey, look, I know I haven't done radio since college, but I really miss it, and I'd like to get back to it. And they gave me the chance initially to get back into radio by doing DJing, by interning, by doing those graveyard shifts, as they're known in radio, where you're DJing from midnight to 6 a.m. And that was kind of my road back into broadcasting. And that was just a thrill, because that was a station, again, that I grew up listening to. And to find my way back to radio through WRCN was absolutely amazing for me.
Yeah, and out here on Long Island, again, for those that are avid watchers of our podcast, and or maybe even Sharks fans too, that were watching Dan on Monday, and for those that do not know what Long Island really is all about, the radio stations out here, unless you have, WBAB or even Z100, 100.3 on the FM dial here in New York. Chris, I'm just trying to think, other than 98.3 or anything else, there's not really that many radio stations. So it's, obviously it's the supply, there's not a lot, but the demand is obviously there for kids to learn, and even for at your time when you were younger, to get back into that industry. So that's really good for you, where obviously you had that small radio station to get into. And then you were hired by another station, WLIR 92.7. That was eventually that was revamped from WDRE in 96's alternative rock. So that was a complete revamping. Give us a little bit of background from there onward.
Yeah, what happened was really interesting, Joey. As you know, I was still doing the software engineering full time. Got back into RCN in 1989, and was doing the music thing really almost exclusively. But then wanted to get back into my hockey thing. And again, I grew up an Islander fan, so always had followed the Islanders. I was 11 years old when they arrived in 1972, so they were always my favorite team. And I approached WRCN after, getting my foot back in the door there and said, hey, how would you like me to do this little Islander report for you? I'll go to the Coliseum for the home games and file a little report where I tell you what happened in the game and drop in some player and coach interviews. And then when they're on the road, I'll just do my own little recap of the game, and we'll run it on the morning show, because I was interning on the morning show. I had a crazy schedule in those days. I would literally intern on the WRCN morning show from about 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then race off to Grumman from 9 to 5. And then when they agreed to let me do that, I would go to the Coliseum from 7 to 11, then drive back to Hampton Bays at the end of the night, get home at midnight, wake up at 4 a.m. and do it all over again. So it was crazy, working those 20-hour days essentially. But to have this connection back to hockey, back to the Islanders, was just amazing for me. So WRCN was the one that allowed me to do that little Islander Minute, as we call it. And I did that for 5 years. So for 5 years, from 89 to 84, I'm doing software engineering full-time, but I'm doing this Islander thing on the side that I totally love, and building up my experience at WRCN, now getting some better shifts, not always the graveyard, filling in sometimes, doing a whole week of, 7 to midnight DJing, doing news, doing sports in the morning, filling in. So getting a lot of experience. And then what happened was that station, WRCN, even though they were a rock station, they got the rights to broadcast the Islander games in 1994. So they had their announcers in Barry Landers, who's a great legendary play-by-play man, and Bobby Nystrom, who was doing the color then, but they needed someone to do pregame, postgame, and intermission. So they looked around and said, hey, here's Chris King. He knows the team from day one, and he's covered them for 5 years as a reporter. Let's put him on the air doing pregame, postgame, and intermission. So I did that at RCN for 2 years. That's 94 to 96. Then, as you mentioned, the WLIR situation occurred because they got the broadcast rights. Now, that was another thrill for me, because again, I am just a huge music guy, and like alternative and classic rock are my two favorite music formats. So to get a chance to work at a world famous station in WLIR in the alternative world was an absolute thrill. And they said, we know what you did at RCN. You did the pregame, you did the postgame, you did the intermission. We also need you to produce the broadcast, and we need you to engineer the broadcast. So in this business, you never say no. So literally at that point, I was doing all 5 of those jobs at once on the broadcast. And again, still full-time doing my engineering thing, but, part-time now this Islander role had started to build. And it was a lot of fun, just getting to work in all those different jobs, doing Islanders radio, and now on the Islanders broadcast for the first time.
It's crazy because when, again, and I hate to keep bringing back up your San Jose counterpart, but I remember when we had asked Dan, we had said, he's in charge of the whole operation with the Sharks and everything. Now, obviously we'll get to that with you, but off script for a second, when you were doing all 5 different things for the radio station, you were producing, you were, I'm assuming you obviously edited everything, you did all of it. So, at the time, and then on top of it, you still had your full-time job at Grumman, Chris. How difficult was that? Sleep deprivation, your health, etc.
It was crazy, like I said, because some of those days were 20-hour days, so it was crazy. And again, moving to Reuters helped a little bit because that was back in towards the Coliseum. So when I went to Reuters in 94, they were based in Hauppauge. So now I'm coming in from the East End and, getting much closer, only a half hour to the Coliseum. And again, kind of moving back to my hometown area, which was East Islip. Yeah. And then it was suddenly just a half-hour ride as opposed to an hour ride from Hampton Bays. So you're cutting the commute, down quite a bit. But it was a thrill. It was funny. Actually, a friend of mine had made a videotape of me doing those 5 jobs at once at WLIR, which I hadn't watched for maybe 15, 20 years. And I'd been doing an office cleanup lately. That's been my big project. And came across that DVD and said, let me put this in. And I just forgot how crazy it was to actually be doing all 5 of those jobs at once. And now we'll get to the the Hofstra situation as well, but Hofstra has 5 or 6 people to do those 5 or 6 jobs, and I was doing them all by myself. But it was a great experience. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially as you were bringing up with Hofstra, because on top of you being a part of the Islanders broadcast, well, one of the stations that it's been on for many years was on the student radio station, 88.7 FM out here on Long Island, WRHU. And it's actually, it comes right across the street from the Coliseum at Hofstra University. So just to rewind a bit for those that have been watching The Last Dance, we know we go from here all the way back.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we're doing here. We're doing that here for a quick second. But Chris, after your time there at Reuters and at Grumman and at the aforementioned radio stations, now we're at the New York Islanders. Talk about how you got that gig.
Yeah, this is what they call, Joey, the proverbial fork in the road. Okay, it's 1998. I'm still doing the 2 jobs. I'm still a network engineer at that point for Reuters full-time and an Islander broadcaster part-time. But in 1998, it's the Islanders who come to me and say, hey, you've been doing a really good job doing these 5 jobs at once on the broadcast, but we'd like you now to be the full-time color analyst. So, that was absolutely a thrill to have them, approach me in that way and say, we like your work so much, we want you to do this full-time. But obviously when they make that offer, you realize the other job has to go away. So I had this incredible engineering job that I loved, that paid a ton of money, but now is the opportunity to get to a job, that would really be my lifelong dream. Wouldn't pay as much money because radio doesn't pay as well as engineering. So that's what I always look at as the fork in the road. 1998, being asked to put your engineering job behind and now go to radio full-time to do the Islanders. So, couldn't pass up that opportunity. In the end, it wasn't as difficult a decision as I thought, because I just said, look, if I say no to this, I'll look back the rest of my life going, what if? I said, at least let me try it. If I bomb, I can always go back to the engineering thing. So that really was what it came down to. So left the engineering world behind in 1998, got the Islander color analyst job full-time. Actually was a color analyst for 12 years. And then eventually, as you said, we can move forward now to WRHU and Hofstra, because that's when I eventually got the play-by-play job, and I'm doing play-by-play now on Hofstra's radio station as our flagship for 10 years. So that's really how it came together, in that, you talk about doing those 5 or 6 jobs behind the scenes, then 12 years of color, and now 10 years of play-by-play.
Yeah, it's crazy because, eventually once you do all of these jobs, that will be recognized by whoever the decision maker is for you to become the next voice of the New York Islanders. And Chris, not only becoming the next voice of a National Hockey League franchise and being one of the most storied franchises in all of hockey, but how about a team that you've rooted for your entire life, and for you being a native Long Islander like myself as well, just not too far from where you are actually, which is wild, but to be like that dream to call, and not even for, I don't know, the Dallas Stars or the New Jersey Devils. You're calling for your team. What is that feeling like for you?
It's completely different, Joey, and that's the thing. Like you said, if it was any of the other, no offense to the other 30 teams in the National Hockey League right now, but it wouldn't be the same for me. There's that emotional attachment of, again, it's 1972. I'm 11 years old. My dad had taken me to a ton of, Long Island Ducks hockey games at the time. Yeah. They were in the Eastern League, so we'll come full circle to that eventually too. Yeah. But, to have your own NHL team arrive. I'm 11 years old, and wow, we got a team in the NHL now. I was a Bruins fan before that because of Bobby Orr, but now I got my own NHL team. So the total thrill in 1972, and then to, like you said, to be broadcasting for that team that I have this incredible emotional attachment to, because I've followed the ups and downs and the roller coasters of that team my entire life. It was a dream scenario. It absolutely was. If I could have handwritten out on a piece of paper, what's your dream job? It would have been radio play-by-play broadcaster for the New York Islanders, and not a lot of people get to do that. So I was just absolutely thrilled.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and to be blessed to be able to call or to be the voice of your favorite team. I can't even imagine what went through your mind when you got that offer. But now moving on with Hofstra University and the flagship station for the New York Islanders, WRHU. I have to ask you this because It's an odd situation where you work with, obviously, Greg Picker being your color analyst, but also there are some radio students that fill in sometimes when Picker's not there. What is that like for you? Where a lot of other radio stations would, or like for the Penguins, Phil Bourque is their color analyst on radio, but you say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to have a lot of these students there. What is your thoughts to have someone that did not play the game, if you will, to be by your side?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Joey. Again, Greg's been full-time with me now for 5 years, so I haven't had a partner other than Greg for the previous 5 years, but we'll get to the students and the job they do on the broadcast. But, you talk about having a color analyst who didn't professionally play the game. I was in the same role, so I certainly can appreciate the hard work that Greg puts in, and he does an amazing job, and he kind of comes at it from the same side I did, in that, he grew up a fan. He grew up watching the organization. He has an incredible, knowledge of the history of the team. I kind of take the early years and he takes the later years. And between us, we've got it all covered. So, having Greg come on full time was a big, big change, and a great change for the quality of the broadcast. And again, nothing against the Hofstra students, but, to have the full-time partner and you kind of build that chemistry, which we have over the last 5 years, really helps. But again, the Hofstra students do an incredible job each and every night as we talk about all those jobs that are going on behind the scenes at the studio, of producing, engineering, cutting highlights, doing updates, doing all the features. That's what they're doing on the studio side, but they're still out with us on the arena side every time for the home games. And they're doing the walk-off interviews between periods. They're doing the coaches' post-game interviews. They're there, they're in the building, they're on the air, they're getting incredible experience. And again, this is now, we will soon finish our 10th year with Hofstra as the flagship station. So they have done just a remarkable job. And it's almost like, we're a sports franchise, just the way the Islanders would, bring up players from their farm team and move them along as they get better. Same thing with these broadcasters. They get their feet wet as freshmen. They get a little more responsibility as sophomores. Then as juniors and seniors, they're doing the features. They're on the broadcast itself. And I've had some incredibly talented, Hofstra students that have come through already in the 10 years and gone on to do great things too. So it's just a thrill to work with them. And again, I think the fact that I've done all those jobs in the past really resonates with them to say, hey, look, if you can start, get your foot in the door doing any job on an NHL broadcast, and they're the only college in the country that can say they do a professional, one of the big four, if you will, sports networks games, they know what a great experience it is for them, and they take it very seriously. And again, they've won 3 Marconi Awards recently, which is, the best non-commercial radio station in the country. So they've won the Stanley Cup of non-commercial radio, if you will, 3 times in the last couple of years, which is just a tribute to the great work put in by not only the students who do the Islander games, but the students who do all the other things at WRHU as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously in the transition from now currently the late Charles Wong to Ledecky and Malkin, to John Ledecky and Scott Malkin, but things obviously have been growing in the New York Islanders organization. And one of which being, Chris, you guys are now on 103.9 WRCN, and you also are on ESPN Radio, which is big because obviously the Islanders, we hate to say it, but the Islanders are always going to be number 2 in this area. The New York Rangers being number 1, and the Devils sometimes even potentially hopping over the Islanders. How big is that, not only for you as a broadcaster, because now your voice gets heard on a whole bunch more a whole lot more stations, but also for the franchise too? How big is that, do you think?
Yeah, it's really big. And again, I'm not giving the island to the Rangers, Joey. I'm sorry about that. The island belongs to the Islanders, and that's, the word island is in there.
Yes.
But I'll give the Rangers the city, and the island belongs to the Islanders. So, but it was huge for us because, again, number 1 for me, WRCN comes back on as an affiliate. That's where I started. That's where I grew up. Every night I'm back on 103.9. I met my wife at that radio station.
That's wild. Okay.
Back on there is amazing, and they cover Suffolk County. Then you bring in WRHU that covers Nassau County, and that did give us the island. But now to add, first of all, the brand name of ESPN to your broadcast, the biggest name in all of sports broadcasting, and to give yourself a signal that, again, we would, have a handful of games on the FM, a lot more games on the AM, but still the coverage on those 2 stations to give us all of New York City. Now you're bringing in New Jersey. Now you're bringing in Connecticut. Adds a ton to our coverage. So we're not just Long Island anymore broadcast-wise. we're New York City, which is obviously the #1 market in the country, and we're branching out into the other 2 states in the tri-state area as well. So just to have that reach in terrestrial radio was a big thing. And of course, nowadays, you may have more listeners listening to your game not on terrestrial radio because of satellite radio. We're on Sirius XM because of internet. We're on everybody's phone, we're on everybody's tablet, we're on everybody's computer. If you've got an app, you've got the game. I mean, we get emails and correspondence from people in Europe, all over the world who listen. So sometimes you forget about that worldwide reach that you have on the internet through NHL.com, through NewYorkIslanders.com, through the Hofstra app. So these days, you reach so many more people than you did in the old days when it was only the terrestrial, radio signal that was the way your audience could listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the third period of our interview here, I just want to ask a few more questions here. And the biggest part of your time as a New York Islanders radio play-by-play man, what is your favorite memory?
Yeah, it's certainly, the John Tavares double overtime series-winning goal against the Florida Panthers in 2016, Game 6 in Brooklyn. Over my shoulder there, you might be able to see
yes, I can. Yeah.
Back page of Newsday, and Newsday did a full-page story on my call that time. I, put the yes, yes, yes in the call for the first time ever, and the call kind of blew up. It went viral. It was being played on every radio station in the country the next day and every TV station in the country too. So it was kind of that proverbial, 15 minutes of fame where, something you never expect to have your, call be played not only on sports radio, but on, music radio, on news radio, on ESPN television all over the place. And that was certainly, the best call, the call that's given me the most fame so far, I'd say. That would be, the call that most people associate with me. And still, Joey, when people meet me for the first time, they'll say, "Oh, I love that call," or "That call's my ringtone." And people have played my call back on their phone as their ringtone. So that really, resonated home with a lot of the Islander fans. When you win a playoff series for the first time in 23 years, the yes, yes, yes call on the Tavares double overtime goal would be tops for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I should point out, too, with the Ducks, which I know we didn't get into, but the Long Island Ducks have won 4 championships in the 20 years that I've been there, and I've been able to work on all 4 of those championship series as well and call their first championship. I was doing the play-by-play. So any type of championship's always special, and the minor league baseball is a big thrill for me as well and something I love. So, I would put the Tavares call as my Islander highlight, and then the first Ducks championship call in 2004 as another one that's always special to me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we unfortunately don't have enough time for the time with the Ducks, but I do want to ask you this for our Islanders faithful out there. So now during your time on Long Island and then the team moves to Brooklyn, I got to ask you this, where did they place you in Brooklyn? Just as an aspiring broadcaster myself, I look and I say to myself, well, I don't really see any press boxes because there are none. We all know where Brendan and Butch are, and they're basically they're in the camera pit right underneath. So now I've always tried to find where you guys are, and I can't find you.
Well, it's funny, Joey, because obviously we're not going back there anymore.
Right.
But but it was a very unusual situation. And you're right. When they built the arena, they had an option to build it for hockey and basketball or just basketball. And to save some money at the time, they did it just basketball. So that became an issue when suddenly a hockey team's there and it wasn't built for it, and we know all those things. And they never had a press box at all because they would put people courtside for the basketball. So they basically just set us up at a card table, honest to goodness, at the top of the lower bowl. So we sat at the top of Section 9, which was the end the Islanders shootout twice. It was the lowest position in the NHL, which made it interesting to be that close to the action. We're only 18 rows off the ice. And being in the middle of the crowd, although it had its challenges to have all those people around us, it also did bring a lot of energy as well. So it's strange to say that it was almost too low in some regards, and that it was hard to see certain areas of the ice that you can see better from up a little bit more. Like Brendan and Butch, again, are across the ice, and they're a little more centered. We were down in one zone, but only 18 rows off the ice. So it was an unusual situation. Again, I don't think the fit was ever right. And after, 3 full-time seasons, 2 part-time seasons, the 5-year experiment, if you will, has come to an end. And, I'm just thrilled to know that next season, everything will be played at the Coliseum, regular season playoff games. Yep. We'll celebrate again another final year at the Coliseum. And then the following year, which I don't think a lot of people realize, when the new arena at Belmont opens, that will be the 50th year of New York Islanders hockey in the National Hockey League. So you want to talk about what a way to celebrate a 50th anniversary year in the National Hockey League, 2021-22. The arena is scheduled to open in October. It will be the 50th year of Islanders in the NHL. So that will be an amazing way to celebrate that incredible milestone. The first year in a brand new building, which, by all accounts is going to be the tops in the National Hockey League.
And also the 32nd team in the NHL too. Seattle will most likely be coming, I believe, 21, 22 as well. So as we close this up, I have to ask you just 2 rapid fire questions. So rapid fire, this is what we've done with all 20 previous guests. So favorite ice cream, because now obviously summer is here for us now, unofficially. We'll give you a couple. So your counterpart, Dan Rusanowski, his favorite, vanilla black raspberry. Also, Brett Hedican, Americone from Ben & Jerry's. Obviously, we got a few of those. So Chris King, to add you to the list, what is your favorite ice cream?
Yes, for those of you scoring at home, it is Moose Tracks. Now, I'm sure many of you have not heard of that, but Moose Tracks is vanilla ice cream, and in it there are Reese's peanut butter cups and chocolate fudge. Okay, so you think about that combination. And how I got hooked on that, Joey, was doing duck games out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Okay, there's a company out there called Turkey Hill, which is that's their home. Okay, but they've become big elsewhere now, and they made the most amazing Moose Tracks ice cream I've ever had in my life. And Turkey Hill is one of the concessionaires at Clipper Magazine Stadium, where the Lancaster Barnstormers play. So anytime the Ducks and the Barnstormers had a rain delay, I would race over to that ice cream stand and get some Moose Tracks. So I got hooked on it because of that. And then I would start hoping for rain delays because it was so darn good. So that's how I got hooked on Moose Tracks. If you haven't tried Moose Tracks, you can get it now in any grocery store, but go out and get yourself some Moose Tracks. It's awesome.
That's fantastic. So, again, Chris, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here on episode number 21 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everything, but just for you being here this evening was a ton of fun, and I know for a fact our New York Islanders faithful will definitely appreciate our little chat here tonight.
No, thanks so much for having me, Joey. It was a great time. It really was. A nice walk down memory lane.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So before you go, just want to say a couple of quick credits here. Episode number 22 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series continues this coming Monday. We do not have a time yet. We have not gotten an exact confirmation from San Jose Sharks TV voice Randy Hahn. He will be on the show with us from NBC Sports California, Monday, June 13th. Time is to be determined. Please follow us at Observe Eastern on Twitter for more details. Also, episode number 7 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast, episode number 7, will come to you live on Tuesday, the 16th. I apologize. The 16th of June at 6 p.m. I did mess that up. Randy Hahn is Monday, June 15th. For those that are scoring at home, I do apologize. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for Chris King, I'm Joey Jarzynka saying so long, and we will see you on Monday night. And for those, again, we'll see you next time.